This is a setup for intermediate columns, C6 1/4 by 4 columns. When you set these up, you want to make sure that the top is at the outside and the base plate is at the inside towards the oven. That way the guy handling the base plates does not have to walk from the oven all the way around the setup in order to get to his work area. Set it up like this. Clamp your horses so you get a good ground. Pull one machine over and to the far side that's going to weld the tops before you spread the columns out. You don't want your horses too wide, otherwise you're going to have a hard time moving your columns around. So you want your horses in fairly well. Leave yourself about 5 feet hanging off of each end. And make sure you leave plenty of distance for work on the inside, because you're going to end up spreading these all the way out here and the guy on the inside is going to run out of room. The intermediate columns all spread out. Up to this point, this is a single person job. If you set up the columns right with the sawhorses narrow, you can move these things around from one end only. You want to make sure that these holes right here are on the outside of the horses. Those are fan deck holes. Oh, pardon me, those are coil support holes. So they need to be on the outside of the horses because you're going to be putting the fan deck clip on there and you don't want to crawl over the horses to do that. That's going to go about that general area there. When you set these up, you put all your parts inside. You see I got top plates there, the fan deck clips there, all the way down, except number one, I have the top plate there. I only have one fan deck clip in the column, not two. The other fan deck clip is down here. You keep that separate. The reason why you do that is because if you put it inside the first column, you have to fill your hands with something while you're maneuvering the column around or dump it out on the ground. So you leave it in the next column. So the fan deck clip that goes underneath this column is actually in this column. You'll be taking it out once you roll this column over and putting it on. And you'll do that all the way down the line. That way you're not fiddling with trying to hold extra parts or deal with extra parts. So the jigs you're going to want for the top end are going to be this 90-degree inside jig. It's machined for a 90-degree on the inside. And the fan deck clip jig. Fan deck clip jig only works with top plates welded on. First thing you're going to want to do is go down as the guy on top. Go down and tack all these on. It just sits like that, up against there, flush with the top. Just like that. Nothing too fancy, no clamping. Clamping is a waste of time. You reach in there and tack it in two places just below the holes. So you put a tack on below each hole in the bottom, and that's all it needs to hold it in. So, and you'll want to do that all the way down before you actually get started on this thing. So when you actually do work on this, if you're doing this as a single person operation, you build the top first. You build it. You work your way down the tops, build them all, and the columns move that way as you progress down the line. And you completely weld them as you go. When you get down to the end, you will go to the other side and install the base plates. And the base plates, then you will work your way back to the top with the base plates. And when you get there, the stacked columns is done, then they're stacked down on the ground. You want to make sure though, if you're working as a team, the guy at the top goes ahead and runs down the entire stack and tacks these in first. It'll make it easier for everybody. And then he's the one that goes first. The top guy goes first. And he needs to do a couple of columns down before the guy putting the base plates on starts. That way, top plate guy will be about here, and then the bottom base plate guy will start. That way you're not interfering with each other, dumping each other's parts out. When you start on the base, make sure you have a good C-clamp and your base jig set out and ready to go. Make sure you have the proper base jig set out. When you grab a C-clamp, make sure it's a good C-clamp, not a crappy one. Put a shot of oil on the threads and the pad. Make your life easier if you oil the C-clamps up every time you use them. When you're indexing plates, make sure you read your print. Most cases, the plate goes flush with the T-bolt side of the holes. That's the holes that are all the way down it. You must read your print before you put them on there. Double check. Make sure well in advance that you put your plates in the oven. Preheat them. Don't preheat them with a torch. It's a waste of time. It takes too much time, a lot of work. Just easier to throw them in the oven a couple hours ahead of time. Turn the oven on 500 degrees. When you fish the plates out, you'll probably pull a couple out at a time, 2 to 3 out at a time, stack them on each other, grab them with pliers and carry them down to your area. When you're here, what you will do is set them on the appropriate columns, put the first one in place, tack it in place, remove your jig, go to the next one, fix your jig on the second one, tack that base plate in place, then move to the third one, tack that base plate in place with the same method, and then go back through and weld them completely. Once they're welded completely, this set of 3 is done. You'll move on to the next set of 3. Always make sure you're watching out for the guy up here. If you get ahead of him, you dump his parts on the ground. You don't want to do that. That just causes too much trouble.
Put it up against here. We're going to make sure that it's flush. Definitely not sticking over on the side with all the holes on it. So, looks pretty good there. Give it some tacks. Alright, now that it's tacked on, want to make sure that it's flush on this side. Some of these are a little not so square, so I'm going to hold that in a little bit and tack the top so it's nice and flush across the side. Alright, and then it just gets welded all the way around on the inside. So I'm going to start at the top here, go down on this side, and then across. That. Take our angle, pulls up, butt up to the end. Make sure it's nice and even on both sides. And then we'll give it some tacks. And then go ahead and weld the sides, weld to the heel of the angle. That is the first angle clip.
And here Mitch is welding the angle onto the other side of the intermediate truss. Done it the same way, using the jig, tacking it down, and then welding it towards the heel. Make sure those slotted holes are facing up. When welding the top plates, the top smaller plates onto the columns, at times there may be a little bit of burn through like that. You want to make sure you go through with a grinder and clean all that down. If there are larger divots, those need to be filled from this side and then ground down smooth and flat as well. And then once that is done, the top is completed. Alright, so here Mitch is grabbing out a bottom plate from the oven, so preheated. Makes it so that they weld on there real nice, no problems with fusion or anything like that. So here we go.
Alright, then we just go ahead and make sure it's flush on the one side, give it a couple. Alright, T-tacks there. Go ahead and take the clamps and the jig off. So go ahead and tack and weld this top piece. Now for the one side that it's flush to, you want to make sure that it's nice and square. So this one's off a little bit. I'm going to pull it in with my hand. It just takes a tiny bit. And then I'm going to get the top of the weld. Now it's together, just going to weld all the way around on the inside and both of these edges on the outside.